Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Have a Seat with Chris Hansen tonight from New York City, where we once again dig into the Dahvie Vanity story. Jesus Torres, blood on the dance floor, many years on the road, many victims who have been interviewed on this show, sexual assault, all kinds of other allegations involving Dahvie Vanity and some of his colleagues. Tonight, we are lucky to continue this investigation with two very special guests, one of whom is Bryce Hall, who is a videographer and a content creator who spent 3 to 4 years on the road with Dahvie Vanity and Blood on the Dance Floor. He's got some amazing stories to tell. And a survivor who I've been talking to for the past couple of weeks, who is brave enough to come forward and share her experience with us and let you know exactly what kind of a person Dahvie Vanity is. Kristin Gonzales also joins us tonight. Bryce, let's jump right in with you. How are you tonight?
Hey, I'm good, Chris. Thank you.
So set this up for me, Bryce. How did you first get in contact with Dahvie Vanity? And you were a kid pretty much at the time, right?
Yeah, I was 18. Long story short, not to drag it out, I had a band I was supposed to go on tour with right when I graduated, and that kind of fell through. So I contacted their management because Warped Tour was coming up in St. Petersburg, and their manager got right back to me and said, you know, we're actually looking for someone to start doing video now, because the person they had with them at the time was mainly a photographer, started doing video, but they wanted mainly a video person.
And so what did you know about Dahvie Vanity and Blood on the Dance Floor at that time?
I knew everything that was out there. You know, I was pretty in the scene at that point. I mean, always going to shows, always keeping up with, you know, what drama's happening, things like that. So I pretty much knew everything that had happened, you know, in the past with him.
And did that make you anxious about being on tour with these guys, chronicling their on-stage activities and some, I suppose, off-stage activities as well?
Yeah, I was excited to get the opportunity to actually start touring, since it's all I ever wanted to do. And so for them to give me the offer, it was, you know, I was a little nervous, but I also was open to just being like, okay, well, let's just see what this is about. And if anything, it's going to be, you know, my start in touring, and at least I can get my foot in the door with a band that's already doing fairly well at the time.
And how did Dahvie strike you? What kind of a guy did he initially seem to you?
He was a good dude. Like, that's the craziest part about it is right when I started touring with them, I was like, I think he's right. Like, I saw every time he would come and say, you know, that's not true. These things aren't true about me. I was framed, blah, blah, blah. And I started to think, like, maybe that's the case, because he was always so nice. You know, he went out of his way to be nice to people. He just had that, like, instant charm about him that you're like, this dude, if I had not known anything in the past, I would have said, this dude's any normal dude. He just dresses, you know, as he does.
And what was it about him that, looking back, allowed him to get away with this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde persona?
He was smart, man. He knew exactly what to say. He knew exactly when to have everyone leave the room. He was just very good at being a shitty person. You know, for example, like, he would get in really close with the parents. And so when these girls would come up at the merch table, he would be giving them free merch, giving their mom free merch, and he'd get really close with the parents. And then, you know, that would allow him to be close to the entire situation, you know, but like I said, he just had that charm about him. So he didn't come off as a scumbag, skeezy, anything like that. And even his demeanor, you know, when the cameras were on, when there's people around, he was a nice dude. And I would have backed him up on that, you know, as long, you know, before I even saw anything or knew anything or kind of saw that these situations kind of lined up, I vouched for him. I would tell everyone back at home and people that knew I worked for him, like, dude's not a bad dude. Like, yeah, he's a little nutty, but I mean, who isn't?
You also got to know Jay Von Monroe. Let's talk about him for a minute. You know, he was on tour with Dahvie, and there are those who have questions about what Jay saw and did. And again, I want to be very clear here. This is an investigation to Dahvie Vanity, not Jay Von Monroe, not Jeffery Star, necessarily Dahvie's security guys. But how do you describe the relationship between Jay and Dahvie?
It was pretty separated, to be honest with you. Like, there was definitely a divide, you know. I started hanging out more with Jay on tour, and if he didn't need to be at the venue or on the bus, he wasn't. And, you know, even when they were at the house, Jay was in his room all the time, except when Dahvie needed him for something. And, you know, it sucks to see these people come out and say that, you know, well, he must have saw something. He was there all the time. He really wasn't. And it was kept at such a distance too, where Jay didn't present him. Jay wasn't present enough to see anything. They were two completely different people. They just happened to be in the same band. So they would hang out together sometimes, but it was really forced. So there was like barely a friendship there.
Give me a sense for the dynamic on stage. You're out there, you're videoing the entire concert, you're working, you're hustling. What did you see? What was the relationship between the band members of Blood on the Dance Floor?
It was the same thing, man. It was just separated. You know, when people come out and say, you know, the crew must have seen stuff, the bodyguards must have seen stuff, people on the tour then must have seen stuff. Again, he was very good at keeping things secret, you know, for like, you know, his bodyguard, for instance, you know, he would keep that bodyguard on him for 14, 16, 18 hours a day. And the second he would say, okay, you can go eat or you can go sleep, or I don't need you right now, they were just like, thank God. And they would get out of there, just because it's tough being around someone like that, where it's, you know, if he snaps his fingers, it needs to happen. And, you know, to go back with the band members too, he was very good, including myself, at picking people to tour with him that didn't, for lack of a better terms, didn't really have a lot going on outside of them. Like, Dahvie knew that I didn't have anything else going on. He knew this was my first tour, you know, first tours. He knew that I was the only one. Like, I couldn't just quit him and go work somewhere else. I would have to go back home. And, you know, same with most of the band members, you know, and also these guys that were in this band, this wasn't their end goal. They were looking for this as a stepping stone, you know? Oh, I can join this group and play in front of huge crowds on Warped Tour. And at the time that they were doing venues and I was with them, they were bigger venues and they were selling all of them out. So of course, these band members want to be in there and show their skills and be able to go and tour and, you know, make their connections. And he knew that. So he would constantly use that against people. And to be quite honest, no one really wanted to be around him on the bus. He was obnoxious. If he drank at all, it was game over. I mean, there were times he would come to my bunk 3 or 4 in the morning and just wake me up and demand things, demand to see this footage, or demand that I start editing something, or, you know, and that's how he was with everybody. And everyone just kept their distance because no one wanted to be around that. So if he came on the bus with his friends, everyone left because no one wants to be around that.
There had to be some clues, though, Bryce, that something untoward was going on. There had to be a lot of interaction with the younger fans. I mean, the fans basically were young by definition, right?
Yeah, they were. And that was the thing, is we saw him do stuff, but never with underage people. It was always him bringing some girl back to the bus that was clearly of age, or bringing a mom back to the bus clearly of age, you know. And when you look back and think about these stories that you see come out, especially with the victims that have been on the show before, and they tell their timeline, it makes sense. You're like, oh, that's what was going on. It was never something where he would bring some girl on, everyone looked, she was underage, and he'd just be like, keep your mouth shut and leave. It was never any of that. He, like I said, like there was an instance on, it was like in Boise or some state on my first tour, and he brought 3 people on the bus with him. And these people were 18, 19, 20, you know, 2 females and a male. And he brought them back to his back lounge, and he's like, oh, we're going to play video games. This girl's a hairdresser. She's going to do my hair later. And everyone's like, okay, whatever. They went to their back lounge. He kept the door open. They were playing video games. And then he took her to the bathroom. Like, oh, she's going to do my hair, blah, blah, blah. He goes, oh, I'm going to shut this because it's too loud. And then they left very suddenly. No one thought anything of it. Look online and comes it. When he shut the door, he slammed her against the wall, you know, whatever they had said. And you're like, oh shit, that was that. You know, no one saw anything because people would have spoken up if they saw something. At least I would want to hope so. I never personally saw anything on tour.
You hear a lot about security guards, and there was one former security guard who was prosecuted and sent to prison on the West Coast, formerly a security guard for Dahvie Vanity. And people have extrapolated from that, okay, this guy was bad, so all the security guards were bad. They knew what was going on. They let it happen. It was a wink and a nod. Do you buy that, or what do you think was going on with the security guards? You mentioned that they were dismissed at some point in the evening and allowed to, do their own thing.
Yeah, when you look at it black and white like that, kind of like what we talked about earlier, when you see someone getting caught with that stuff and you hear they have a bodyguard, of course your first reaction is to be like, the bodyguard knows something. The term bodyguard was so loose with him, it was more like a personal assistant and a bodyguard. If he snapped his fingers and wanted Chipotle, whoever was working security needed to go find Chipotle and go get it. I need this, I need that. It was a personal assistant runaround. And like I said, he would keep them so busy and just need him by his side at all times that the second he would say, hey, you can go to dinner, they were like, Bryce, you want to go get something to eat? Let's go right now. I have 20 minutes. It was very fast paced because he has to get ready to go on stage and things like that. And, and it's unfortunate because both of his previous bodyguards are friends of mine, and I can personally say they're two of the best people I know. And I know in my heart they wouldn't, if they saw something, they wouldn't have stuck around. I guess that's what every friend thinks if something like that happens. But like I said, they were worked so hard that they weren't kept around, and the second they were able to be released, they left, and plus they had to put up with the, walking him to and from stage. And if there was an altercation at all, they're the ones that had to jump in, they're the ones that had to go, get merch from the merch stand if he had a friend back by the bus that needed merch. It was just a PA position with bigger people that could also be his bodyguard.
Did Dahvie ever seem stressed having to lead this double life, keep his illicit secret life on one side and his public persona on the other?
It's hard to tell. He would go from 0 to 100 real quick. He would go from happy-go-lucky dude who wants to smoke a bowl and hang out and maybe have a drink and watch a movie to he's screaming at someone, threatening to send you home, throwing. It was so chaotic at all times that I'm sure that was a reason he was so chaotic like that. But, I don't know, man. He made it seem pretty easy. He didn't mind dropping money and having people flown in and flown out. And, he didn't hide his drama. If he had drama with somebody in the house, it was very in the open. And also people would just leave. No one wanted to hang out.
That's even more disturbing that he could pull that off. Did you live in the house with him?
I did. I lived with them for like 8 to 9 months in 2013.
And this was the house in Arizona or San Diego? San Diego. A lot of survivors, victims have said, and some have said it on this show, that they were flown out, by Dhabi for illicit relationships, sexual assault, statutory rape. And it happened there, some at the house, some at hotels in the San Diego area. Looking back, can you identify any of these crimes?
I can't identify any of the underage crimes, but I can definitely, contest to his character when he was with them. And, like previous, people have said, he'd fly them out and then, threaten to send them home if they weren't doing something or if they were too annoying or, it was all over. They were constantly always arguing with people and always flying people in and out. And then he would just leave the house for days at a time. No one would see him. He'd come back and just be like, oh, I was just in LA, because he would go and get hotels for these girls if he didn't want anybody at the house to see them, but it was just constant. Even when his girlfriend was there, he would fly somebody in. And, he was just not a good person, like at all, in relationships and friendships and anything. He would have his moments to be good, but I can't count how many times his girlfriend on tour caught him in the bathroom with another girl, or opened up the green room door and he was with some other girl in there, and he just didn't care. He was such a dog. Like, he just did not care at all.
What was it like living in that house day to day?
It had its good days and bad days. It was for someone like me living there, who I've never done something like this, and to be flown out there. Like, for the record, I was flown out there to record, the behind the scenes of their making of one of their albums. And for me, it was like, I can go on tour and then go and make a DVD for this band. Like, I thought, that's great right off the bat. I can go and do all these things. And it was, chaotic, and then it wasn't. The work schedules were, one weekend and it was go, studio late, get back to the house, wake up early, go back to the studio, things like that. But there were times where nothing happened in the house. Like there was nobody there. It was just me at the house or me and Jay at the house. It was fine. But I think one of the worst parts about just being there and working for him was, he would hold it over your head. Like if I asked for money, he would say, well, I'm putting a roof over your head. You're staying here in San Diego for free, and I buy you groceries every now and then. And I said, yeah, but that's because I'm out here working for you. And that was the mentality he had with almost everyone that came out there and worked, that he had under his, control, because he knew I wasn't going to leave. He knew this was the best opportunity I had. And same with the other people that would come in the house, and like I said, some nights would be super calm. Some nights would be chaotic. Someone's talking shit online. He's stomping around the house trying to fight them online, and going on and wants to drink, and then starts throwing things. And he would just come in your room and throw shit around. Just like he just lived like that rock star or child mentality persona, just whenever he wanted, because he just felt like untouchable. Like if anyone backsassed him, threatened to send home. Threatened to not pay you, threatened to kick you out of the house right now. So he just had to pretty much sit there and take it no matter what he was doing. And yeah.
And what do you think his allure was? I mean, he's a guy of modest talent. He had a shtick, but he has this ultra loyal following, and in some cases, some of these fans have attacked and still to this day attack some of his survivors, accusers.
Yeah.
What drove that, do you think? I mean, besides the fact that he picked a very vulnerable crowd of girls as young as 10 years old, and in many cases groomed them along the way, brainwashed them.
I think it's just that charm. And I think too that he's constantly the victim of ridicule, which rightfully so, but in his head, he's not. So whether it's on camera, in his songs, on stage, he projects this martyr-like mentality or persona, and that he's gonna prevail through all the darkness and get out on the other side. And it resonates with a lot of people, because a lot of his fan base are the kids that sit by themselves. They don't have any friends, so they latch onto him, and they think he is a god because he's saying everything that they want to hear, when to anybody else it's just cliche bullshit that of course a 13, 14, 15-year-old is going to pick up on and be like, wow, this is saving my life. That's just who he is, and that's how he presents himself, and that's why he drives all these people in. And I think that's a big reason why people are just like, because when people meet him, like I said, he just has that charm. Like there are people that will say, yeah, I didn't say anything bad. He was actually a pretty nice guy. And that's like with their fan base, they just look at him like a god because he says everything they want to hear. But at 12, 13 years old, you can say anything to them and it's what they want to hear.
Bryce, I want you to hang with me here and listen in to Kristin Gonzales, who's going to join us now. Kristin, it was around this time and in this time frame when you met Dahvie Vanity. And first of all, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
How you doing tonight?
Good. Weather. It's all thunder and lightning over here right now in Orlando, but everything's well.
Thanks for being here with me tonight. How did you first meet Dahvie Vanity?
I met him back in 2006, 2007 through MySpace. Back then, he was the elite hair god. This was right before his coming out with Blood on the Dance Floor. So it was more just the image, scene, shows, bands, all of that. And that's initially how I got in contact with him.
And you went to one of his concerts. How did you actually, so you had this sort of going back and forth on the MySpace thing. How did you actually come in contact with him in person? And how long did you have the back and forth before you actually physically met him?
I've never been to one of his concerts. This was before all of that, about a year or so before he had Blood on the Dance Floor. So this was strictly just straight off of MySpace to have him cut my hair and put extensions in. I wanted that scene look. That's what I was going for.
And so did you think he was going someplace in the music industry? Did you just see him as a, hairdresser who had the look that you wanted? How did you?
Essentially, back then I started booking and promoting bands. I started when I was 13 in Miami, Churchill's, Cafe Iguana, stuff like that. And then he had just started getting into the music scene. So I saw that as an opportunity for me to network, for me to get in communication with people in the industry, especially when I was booking shows in Orlando, at Back Booth and, the Attic and other places like that, the Dungeon. So I saw that as an in to expand my network and to try and get better connections so I can book shows easier and, eventually go on tour and do stuff like that.
How did you get involved in booking concerts, shows at such a young age?
I was walking home when I was in Cutler Ridge Middle School in Miami. I was walking home and there was a garage band, and I would just walk past and I would stop on the sidewalk and see the band play. And eventually they invited me in to join one of their sessions. And these kids were like in high school. And at that time they were trying to book a show at Churchill's and they were having no luck. So I gave it a shot, and that's how it all started.
So you're 13, 14, 15 years old, and you're a concert promoter, essentially.
Nothing super serious, but yes, I would book shows. A lot of the reason was to get into them for free. I was underage. So this is how I was able to get into concerts at a young age, under 18. And
one of the reasons that you were so taken with Dahvie Vanity at the time?
Really mostly taken just because he had the look that I wanted. The MySpace days, that was the days of the scene days. And that's just the look that I was really going for. And the salon that I was going to at the time at Seminole Mall just wasn't hitting the look that I was really trying to achieve.
Tell me about the day you connected with Dahvie Vanity to have him do your hair.
So I honestly don't know the timeline of how long I was in communication with him to the day that we finally met. But he showed up at my parents' house in Longwood Lake Mary. And before that, I had to get permission from my dad. And my dad kept telling me no. He didn't think it was appropriate for someone to pick me up and to, take me to their apartment and have my hair done. And I eventually convinced my father and got the approval. And that's when he came and picked me up from my dad's place.
And you were how old at the time?
This was 2006, 2007. So between the ages of 16 and 17 years old.
16 and 17. Did you have any idea what you're getting yourself into?
No, I really didn't. I didn't have any inkling of, it was going to be what it turned out to be. I honestly just wanted my hair done. I wanted to talk about music and everything. And that's the extent of what I thought it would be.
You get in the car against your dad's wishes, and what happens?
Well, I eventually got my dad's okay to go. That's the only reason why I was able to get out of the house. But we get in the car, and the first thing we do is we go to his mom's house, which is only about 15, 20 minutes away from my parents' house. And I don't know what he was doing, but he was grabbing something. He let me into the house. His parents weren't home. But that was the first stop that we made.
What happened once you got to the house?
Once we got there, he just went in. He let me in the house to his parents, and then he grabbed whatever he was grabbing. We were there maybe 10 minutes, and we left to the apartment that he was staying off of Cimarron by Full Sail.
You go to the apartment, you think, what? You're going to get your hair done. You're going to get this cool look that you had been hoping for that you couldn't get at this Seminole Mall.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering why it was taking so long for us to just do my hair. I didn't plan a day out of this. I just wanted to get my hair done and then, go home. That's what I told my dad. I told my dad he's going to come pick me up. You don't have to pick me up because he's going to take me home. And, that's all it was. We ended up, when we went to the apartment, it was the Winter Park Woods condominiums. I'm 95% sure that was the name of the complex. When we went there was another woman there. She seemed older, very, very much older. I think he introduced me as his band manager, and her name was like Alexandria or Alexa or something like that. And the three of us hung out. There was no drinking, there was no drugs, there was none of that. But that's how just the first introduction into the apartment was.
And when did it come time to do your hair?
Not until later. We all hung out for a little while. We just chit-chatted, and they made DiGiorno pizza, and I remember it to this day because when we finally sat down to eat, we laughed about how it was still doughy and raw, like it wasn't fully cooked through, so we didn't even finish eating. But after that, that's when he took me to the front room, and that's where he was going to do my hair.
Did you have any idea throughout this entire day what you were in for?
No, I had no idea. It was innocent. I just wanted to get my hair done. You know, that's all I wanted to do.
And you were with this guy who, you know, could end up being an entree into, you know, you getting further into the music industry.
I mean, yeah, that and the hair, you know, that's all I was there for. And up into the moment where he's in the middle of doing my hair, did I start thinking that anything was wary or anything was not what I thought it seemed to be.
What was your first inkling that he was up to no good?
It was when I was sitting down in this little chair, facing like a mirror, and he was, you know, messing with my hair, and he was cutting my hair, and he started grinding he just started grinding on my shoulder. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm in his way. So I start, you know, lowering my shoulder a little bit so, you know, I can get out of his way, but it became more prominent, and I started getting a little uncomfortable.
Did you say anything to him? Did you ask him, what are you doing here?
I didn't, but things started escalating really quickly from that point. I think once he realized that I was getting uncomfortable and I started, you know, moving and dropping my shoulder.
What did he do next?
The next thing he did was it was just so fast. It was like 0 to 100. And he, with the shears still in his hand, he just grabbed my head and forcefully, like, I didn't even see him pull his pants, like open his pants, pull anything out. It was, next thing I know, my mouth is on his penis and he's forcing me to give him oral sex.
This is in the middle of a haircut, hairstyling.
This is in the middle of getting extensions and a haircut.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue. I was so shocked. It was like when you're playing Call of Duty and there's like a flashbang that goes off and it kind of just like mutes you and you're just like in this daze and this shock. You know, I like couldn't hear anything. I felt very, very numb. And I do remember trying to pull away, and it just made him push on harder. And he was just like, I know you like this. This is almost done.
I know you like this.
To that effect, something of giving me the inkling that this is something that I'm not wanting, that I'm enjoying this.
Was there anything remotely enjoyable about it for you?
No, nothing was enjoyable about that.
Do you think he had planned this the entire time and was just looking for his opportunity to strike? I mean, given the fact that, and how disturbing and how criminal and how wrong the whole thing is, it fits a pattern of his behavior with this lightning fast activity along the lines of what Bryce was telling us earlier, which is, he waited for his moment, he waited for other people to be away, and boom, he strikes.
I mean, one of the things that he took away from me was the ability to trust myself. So it's really hard for me to even look back and answer this. I now have like this warped ability to decipher an innocent connection with someone versus someone taking advantage of me. So it's like, I look back at it and I'm just like, were all the signs there and I completely missed them? Did I have this coming? Did I give off any inkling that this is something that I wanted to do? I don't know.
You can't blame yourself for it. You're a victim here. I mean, it seems to me, obviously I'm not a therapist, but he plays on this surprise attack, vulnerable young women, and he got away with it for so long because women like yourselves were so shocked and stunned and inexperienced here that they didn't even know how to report it or what to report. Is that about right?
I mean, for sure. I can't speak for everybody. I know the reason why I didn't report anything was because, of my dad. And my dad is the one who gave me the permission to go. You know, my dad entrusted me to make the right decisions, and you know, I don't know.
Did you trust Dahvie Vanity to cut your hair? And I mean, there had to be some sense of comfort that he created here for you. And give me a sense of the betrayal that you felt when he did this.
I mean, I just wanted to get my hair cut. That's as far as I wanted it to go. You know, I don't know how much trust I could have with somebody that I met online, you know, 15 or 16, 17 years old. And, you know, I just entrusted this person, you know, this online persona. I gave him my address. I gave him my phone number. You know, he communicated with me online. You know, I don't know how much trust I could have actually had in that short time frame. But, you know, I opened myself and allowed this person to, you know, do all this stuff.
But at your age at the time, I mean, you're totally being a normal teenage girl to think, all right, well, I'm going to get a haircut. So what? I'm going to hang out with these people. You know, what possible bad could happen from this? Except maybe my extensions were not right, or the color was off, you know, or the cut wasn't exactly what I wanted. I mean, you had nothing to fear, and it seems like he knew that and exploited that.
He didn't even finish my hair, and the effed up thing about it is I still paid him. I still gave him $30.
You pay, after all that, you paid him?
I still paid him after everything that happened. Like, after, you know, he ejaculated into my mouth, I got up, I gave him money, and I fled the apartment and ran out to the front of the community. And I contacted my father, who was irate that he had to come pick me up. And he didn't realize what had happened, but it's like 9 o'clock at night. And, you know, I'm in the front of this complex, and I'm just calling for my dad. And he's like, I thought you had a ride. You know, why do I have to come pick you up? And it's just like...
Kristin, you didn't allow this to happen. Something did this to you, you know?
I know, but it you know, it still hurts. It still hurts. And you know, it's like I put myself in this position, and I'm not trying to blame myself, you know, but it's like, if I wasn't so naive, I could have avoided this or listened to my dad.
That's who girls are. You know, I'm sorry you had to go through this. It breaks my heart. What did he say to you when you left, Dahvie?
I honestly, like I said, it just was like a flashbang that went off. I don't remember. I have a lot blacked out. I don't remember if he tried to communicate with me afterwards. I don't recall if he tried to check up on me or try to, you know, communicate with me again, like he did with some other people. I honestly don't know. I don't know if I blocked him. I just remember getting up and just giving him the money and just leaving to the front of the complex and calling my father and just waiting out there for like 40 minutes for him to come pick me up, and hiding in hopes that this guy is not trying to see where I fled to, because I mean, he knew I didn't have a car. You know, I didn't know if he was going to look to see if I was, you know, around the neighborhood or what I was doing, you know, so it was just, ugh.
Did you fear that he might come after you again?
I can't say that, because I don't know, because I was not going to put myself in that position again. That was for damn sure. But I just know that when I saw him later in the years as a passerby at Warped Tour, I just know that completely collapsed, because I mean, for the most part, I stopped thinking about it. And then I'm passing by, and I just have a complete meltdown and panic attack for like 2 hours, and eventually had to leave.
You went to one of his concerts after that.
This was Warped Tour. This was just like a touring 100 or so bands that go through the United States. I think it's worldwide back then. I'm not sure, but I don't know if he was performing then or if he was just someone there, but he had a whole posse with him. and I was passing the merch tables with my one of my friends at the time. This is like 2009 or 2010, and he was just walking past me, and I locked eyes with him, and I saw him, and just like I had a meltdown, a complete meltdown.
Did you have any idea he was going to be at that particular Warped Tour?
No, because I never listened to him for his music. You know, I never paid attention to any of that. I never attended any of his concerts. You know, I was just there for a lot of the other bands that were going on. And I think my friend's husband was deployed at the time. So I was just there keeping her company, and we were just going to Warped Tour.
So you have blocked this entire, as best you can, this entire Dahvie Vanity incident out of your mind. PTSD, I assume, everything else, and you go with a friend to Warped Tour, not even knowing that Dahvie Vanity is going to be there, and you see him. What is your reaction? You walk right by him.
We're walking, the merch tables are on my right hand side, and it's like pretty much open on my left, and all of a sudden I just see like this crowd of people, of like 10 or 11 people, and they're all like walking in a group, and I just happen to look over, and that's when I make eye contact with him, and my whole world, it just felt like I melted. Like I just completely melted to the floor, and I looked over at my friend Cherie, and I was like, I need to hide, I need to go, like, and I just fled, and I just cried and hyperventilated for like 2 hours and then we tried walking around again, and I was just like, I can't. I was like, I gotta go, I gotta leave. I couldn't enjoy myself anymore.
Did he see you, Dahvie?
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, he made no attempt to say anything. He made no attempt to walk towards me. He just kind of like looked at me and just kind of like turned his head and just kept walking, and then just starts laughing at the person next to him.
Do you think he recognized you?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
You locked eye contact.
We for sure locked eye contact, or we locked eyes.
And this brought back every horrible repressed memory from that original evening when you were
everything. That was the first time that's the first time I ever said what happened to me. Then it was to that girl. I'm trying not to name her just for her privacy, but that was the first time that I told anybody what had happened to me.
How did she react when you told her?
She cried with me. You know, she felt horrible for me. You know, this is one of my best friends at the time, and she was in pain that I didn't say anything, and you know that I've been holding this to myself, and you know, she hurt for me.
I'm so sorry, Kristin. Do you feel in a way that by speaking out now, you're giving a voice to the 16-year-old Kristin?
Oh, for sure.
Who was assaulted that night in a most vicious, brutal.
For sure.
Right.
You know, I almost came forward back in about 2013. I never really followed any of the Dahvie Vanity things. I didn't know about all these other victims, except for there was a post one day on Facebook, and you know, it was about this girl who was coming forward, and people were like insulting her and bashing her, and other people are trying to come forward and people are insulting them, and you know, it's just like I just didn't want to put myself out there or just seem like I was just another person just trying to come forward. And you know, I just thought, you know, the best thing to do, especially to keep this from my dad, and you know, was to just stay hidden.
What do you say to Dahvie Vanity today?
We're coming for you. You can't hide anymore. There's too many of us. There's nowhere to hide.
There's some feeling that he's been watching these streams, and I heard from more than a number of people that he was in actually making contact comments last week. If he is in the chat tonight, what do you want him to know?
I mean, I don't think there's a better way to say it than what I just said, that we're coming for you. You know, there's too much evidence. There's too many people coming to light. There's too many timelines of other stories that coincide with each other. Like, there's just no way he can get out of it now. You know, I just hope that, you know, me coming forward, just like all the other women that have come forward, it just gives everyone else the platform, especially with what you're doing, you know, to give all of us a voice and to give us the strength so we can do something about it now.
Why did you decide to come forward? Now, you did speak to the Huffington Post when they did the original article a year or so ago, and which was extraordinarily important journalistically and very helpful in getting this rolling. But why did you feel it was so important to tell your story?
A year ago, when I read the first article about the 11 women, that came forward at the time, I had just finished getting over a 3-year-long abusive relationship that I felt just muted me on so many ways, and just that thing. And I just wanted to strengthen myself, and I was doing so. So when I saw that first article, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of feeling like a victim. I'm tired of just letting myself get stomped on. I'm tired of going through what I'm going through. And I was like, let me go ahead and put myself out there and give somebody else the opportunity to, I put my full name in those articles. And I think Jessica, I told her, I was like, put my full freaking name in there just to give someone else the confidence that they can come forward to.
All right. Listen, Kristin, I want you to stand with me here for a minute, and God, it's mind-boggling that he could do something like this to so many young women. Bryce Hall, hearing Kristin's story and knowing what you know today, how would you describe Dahvie Vanity?
I mean, dude's just a monster. Like, there's not really anything else to say. I mean, dude thinks he's innocent. He thinks that what he does isn't wrong. He thinks he's untouchable. Even now, he thinks that he's never going to get caught. And I think that has a lot to do with he doesn't think he does anything wrong. And that's the messed up part about it. Dude's just a shitty person, man. That's really all there is to it. Like, he fits every box in the criteria. Like, dude's not a good person. He had the world at his fingertips at one point, and he let it slide because not only did he want to be a shitty person to the people that were closest to him, but he also wants to go and do stuff. I don't even have words for it. It's just so, like, to listen to Kristin's story and just all the other stories I've heard, even on your show, it's just sucks. It sucks that he's gotten away with it for so long.
What makes a human being do this to other human beings?
I don't know, man. I want to think of every excuse in the book and say, he lived that rock star lifestyle. He thought he was untouchable. He did this, he did that. But I just don't know. I mean, as far as I know, he had a fine childhood growing up. I don't know why he is the way he is. I don't know why he continues to be this way. I mean, even I've seen some of the other people reporting, maybe even you said it last week, I don't remember, but he's still talking to people in Orlando. He's still messaging young girls, like, to this day.
He's on Instagram, giving inspirational advice back and forth. He's got young women, and we know this, who he's trying to have come visit as soon as they can travel after the pandemic.
Yeah, dude, he lures these people in, and he just takes advantage of them. And I don't know why he does what he does, and I don't know how anybody could do what he does, because I don't think I know a worse person than him.
When's the last time you actually talked to Dhabi?
To my knowledge, it was 2016, I think. I think I saw him, at the house right before, because when Jay was ready to leave, I'm the one that took him from San Diego to Arizona. And I believe it was just a couple days before that I was at the house and would see him, because even after I stopped working for him, I still had a friendship with Jay, and I still lived in San Diego. So, I would still go over to the place and hang out, and I'd see him in passing, and there'd be, hey, what's up? How you doing? But that's it. Nothing friendly. We weren't friends at that point.
Does he still owe you for any of the work you did for him?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like everyone else that worked for him, I'm owed a couple thousand. I know other people that are owed, plenty more. I mean, yeah, he still owes me a bunch of money.
And tell me about taking Jay back to Arizona. What was Jay's demeanor, and what had Dahvie done to Jay? Jay seems to me to be a good soul who tried to make it in a bizarro world. And I think you can count him as one of Dahvie's victims as well. Is that fair?
I mean, yeah, dude, definitely. I mean, you know, Jay is such a good person, and he just got put in such a shitty situation. And I think towards the end, you know, I just personally knew, and I think I even told him this. I was like, if I don't pick you up, and drive you away from him, you're not going to do it on your own. And so I went and got him, and I got him out of there. I mean, the stuff he did to Jay is just, I mean, who does that to a person? You know, I remember back in 2014 or 15, we were doing a tour, and Dahvie got some kind of like scalp infection on his wig, or from his wigs, or something, I don't know, but it was like the third or fourth day of tour, and he canceled the tour because he had stuff on his face and it was showing, and he had to go home immediately. And Jay needs life-saving medication on a tour later, and gets told that if you don't do this tour with me, I'm not going to keep giving you money for this stuff. That, again, what human being does that? A selfish human being does that. Someone that doesn't care about anybody except making money, and that's all he cared about. And that dude deserves to just rot.
Did you have any dealings with Jeffery Star during this time?
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey was on the first tour I did with Blood back in 2012, and then we weren't friends by any means, but we were acquaintances. Like, he did a stint on a couple of Warped tours, and I was on those Warped tours, so we would say hi in passing, and you know, that's about the extent of it.
A lot of people have raised questions about Jeffrey and what he saw, what he knew. He appeared on this show and you know, took some heat for doing it. I took some heat for it, but you know, again, the focus of the investigation is Dahvie Vanity. There are a lot of people who were around in those days who have said, look, I regret that I didn't do more, that I didn't see more, that I said things and acted that way when I was that age. But do you blame any of these other people for enabling Dahvie?
No, I really don't, because I mean, it's hard to say because nobody was enabling him. He was such his own person. Like, he didn't have people close to him that were also shitty like that. Like, he didn't have people close to him that were like, oh, hey, let's go do this. Like, he was such a lone wolf when it came to this stuff. Like, he didn't have, you know, a partner in crime. Or I think what it was he kept getting away with it. He kept getting away with it, and he thought that he was indestructible, and he thought that he could just do whatever he wanted. Whether it was fire somebody, whether it was sleep with somebody, you know, anything. And so I just think he just got more and more confident, I guess you would say, in being a shitty person. Like, I don't know. No one ever checked him, because if someone checked him, we're gone. And I know there were a few times that, you know, more on like him being shitty towards certain people, you know, Jay would step in and say something to him because he was the only one that would listen. Like, Dahvie would only listen to Jay at certain times like that. But besides that, like I said, no one could say anything to him because you were fired or immediately gone or kicked out of the house or anything. You just kind of had to go along with it. And as far as the Jeffrey thing goes, on that tour, we barely saw, like, the two groups never came together. Yeah, occasionally, like here and there, they would say hello or whatever, but they didn't hang out. They didn't come on the bus. They didn't do any of that stuff. It was very divided on that tour. So,
Ash Costello tells a chilling story about being in her dressing area as one of the only, you know, girls on the tour, and Dahvie walking in and starting to assault her, choking her. Were you around on that tour? Do you know anything about that?
I don't believe I was around on the tour where she was actually assaulted. I listened to her thing. I remember hearing about it later on. And I remember during the tour, I remember there were like hushes and whispers and things like that Dahvie and her had gotten into an altercation of some sort. I don't remember. And then I remember them being removed from the tour and them leaving. But I don't know if if I was on the tour that she actually got assaulted on. Because I obviously didn't see any of that, and I was still brand new. You know, I had met the people in their band New Year's Day. I mean, I had met them, and we were like casual acquaintances, but also like I was young, I was the new guy, and I was just a photographer. So it's not like everyone was running to me to tell me like, all the juicy details of anything that was happening. You know, it was still kept under wraps because as far as they knew, I was loyal to Dahvie. So of course they're not going to come to me and say, you know, anything bad, because I would run back and tell him. They thought I would. So yeah, but I remember the day they were leaving and everything like that.
Bryce, you heard what Kristin had to say in the interview tonight. Do you have any words or advice or thoughts for her tonight?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I mean, of course you're going to look back and think that I should have done this, I should have done that, but you know, the flashbang analogy you used is right. You know, when that stuff's happening, it's not like you're in complete control and have all your thoughts in line and know exactly what to do. Nobody expects that to happen. And the same with any of the other victims. Like, none of that's your fault. Even if you like led him on or started to do something, like the second you say no, it should be no. But to him, no wasn't an answer. There was no telling him no with anything. I remember the first time I told him no, I got fired, you know? So you can't blame yourself for any of it because, like I said, the guy was smart. He would use that charm up until the point he wanted to be shitty, and then it was just a click and you didn't expect it. So it's not like you can just act really quick like that. Some people can. I know in a situation like that, I've never been put in a situation like that, but I can imagine with these girls, they aren't able to make that rash decision just like that. And can't blame anybody for that except that fucking scumbag.
Bryce, you've had a lot of time to think about this, obviously.
Yeah, you know, when people would leave the crew, it was always tough because there were very few people that left on amicable terms. So, and every time someone left, it was the same routine. Dahvie would talk a bunch of shit about him. In turn, the other crew and people would kind of agree with him. And it was attacking online, or if that person came out and said something. I remember, you know, there'd be times we'd be sitting here and he'd be like, oh, we got a fucking another one, you know, like he'd come from the thing and somebody that left had a bunch of stuff to say. And he would just immediately, you know, be like, yeah, she's lying, right? Blah, blah. And everyone's just, yeah, dude, whatever, like trying to watch a movie, like just, it was just the same thing. And I didn't want to be just another person that quit and had a story like that. I wasn't trying to capitalize on me leaving. I wasn't trying to capitalize on me being with them. Like, I wasn't going to say anything because I just didn't want to be another person that came out and said something like, oh, I used to work for Dahvie, he's a shitty person. It's the same story over and over again. And then when I saw you get involved with it, and I remember hearing the Jeffery interview, and I remember he said something along the lines of like, if you were around during that time and you have seen stuff or can at least speak up, you need to say something. And I felt compelled to, you know, at least speak up. Like, I was never a victim of sexual assault through him by any means, but I can contest to the way he treated people and the way he treated women when they were around and the way he treated his friends that would come on. And it just sucks to see like all of this happen with somebody and still there's been nothing done. But I'm hoping that by me coming on and at least giving some sort of new insight to it and being like, yo, I worked for him, I lived with him, like, he is, yes, everything these people are saying is true. It's 100% true.
And if Dahvie is in the stream, watching the stream tonight, what do you say to him?
I don't have anything to say. Just hope that you don't run into me in Orlando.
What would you do if you ran into him?
You know, my mom's going to hate me for saying this, but I've said that I don't care what happens to me, that if there's not going to be any justice for him, then I don't know what I would do when I see him, but I would probably get taken away in handcuffs. And I'm a very passive person. I do not fight, but I don't know what I would do if I saw him, because the dude does not deserve to just be able to walk around, and dude does not be able to walk around and look at anyone he wants to. Like, that guy should be behind bars, not even for the stuff, not even for being a shitty person towards me and the other crew, for all the stuff he's done to every girl out there. Like, no, it's not cool. And I really, truly hope that I get to sit in a courtroom one day, seeing you without a wig on in an orange jumpsuit and watch the judge sentence you.
Kristin, what do you say to that? What do you say to Bryce tonight, Kristin?
Sorry, that I hope to see him without a wig too. I want to thank Bryce for his words and you know what his, just the kind things that you said, you know, about my experience and you know and having my back and everything, and you know I shouldn't take blame, and you know it hurts me so much to see all these other victims come forward and because I think to myself, if I had said something, if I didn't live in fear and, all of these girls wouldn't have the pain and everything that they're going through, but it could have all been avoided. But, I hope, like I said, me coming forward and all these other girls coming forward and women coming forward that, we can just band together and finally put this to rest so there's no one else can get hurt.
You should know, Kristin, that the chat tonight is showing a great deal of love and support for you, and know that that's out there. A lot of people are right behind you. A lot of people are cheering you on, and everybody understands. And
thank you, everybody.
Bryce put it very succinctly, that, and we know this intellectually, but it needs to be said over and over again. This is not your fault. You got wrapped into a deal with a very, it's hard to even describe how evil this fellow is by what he's done. And it was almost like he had a sixth sense where he could pick people and timing and just seize on that vulnerability.
It's gross.
I mean, it's I've never seen anything like it. I mean, we talk about, the YouTube Psycho Brad of Washington State and what he did to some of these people, but the volume of victims here, and that, Europe and across the country. I mean,
it blows my mind.
We barely scratched the surface here. We had Carrie Louise on in London several weeks back and just told a harrowing story about sexual assault, and then the potential of all kinds of victims in the UK and Germany and all over Europe. It's stunning, really. As we wrap up tonight, Kristin, what is it that you want people to know most?
I mean, honestly, I really don't know how to answer that. I've said my piece. I feel a weight, honestly, has been lifted off my shoulders, especially last night. I finally told my dad about what happened when I got confirmation that we were doing this evening. And it was a very painful conversation because I never wanted my dad to hurt or feel to blame himself for giving me permission to finally go off with this person. But, everyone just keep coming forward. I still have to make a police report. That's something I plan on doing in the next week or so. But everyone else who has something to say, whether you were 18 or not, come forward so we can just band together and just get this freaking over with and just move on with our lives and just start to heal.
Well, I can tell you this, Kristin, there's an FBI agent and a detective at the Orange County Sheriff's Department who want to talk to you. So
awesome. I'm ready.
Bryce, you're getting a lot of love in the chat tonight. Any last thoughts from you?
For anyone that's watching this that obviously is skeptical about the people that were around him, like I said earlier, you look at it black and white. If I saw anything like this come out now, I would instantly also think, people around him must have known something. And I just want everyone who's watching who's skeptical to know that that's not always the case. And things can be a lot different than they seem, as far as just you thinking even bodyguards being close to them at all times. I can't speak for every single person who has ever worked for him. But I can only speak from my experience and from my very close friends who are also on that tour. And, it's just not all what it seems. It's not always a black and white situation. But same thing that Kristin said, if there's anything that anyone has experienced through him, and if people are watching who I've toured with, who we have toured together, who has worked for him, come out and say something. I know I didn't want to do it just because I didn't want to dig up this part of my life anymore, because it's such a footnote. But if you have something to say, come and say it, because every perspective helps, and just showing everybody what a piece of shit this guy is. And it's just one step closer to actually getting some kind of justice for all the people that he did wrong to.
Bryce, thank you very much. Kristin, thank you very much for your courage, your honesty, your candor, being so articulate, because you both really laid it out tonight in a way that I think is important for people to see and hear. Both of you, please have a good night.
You too.
And stay in touch with you, I promise. The story is far from over, but we can't tell it without people like you coming forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in once again. I appreciate it. We've been doing a lot of stories over the last 10 weeks on the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're turning back towards our traditional investigations, Dahvie Vanity. Tomorrow night, we will take you inside Onision's discords with some interviews from people who've never spoken out before. And I'm very fascinated by this, and I think you'll hear and from these folks and hear about what goes on inside this world, and it's alarming, quite honestly. The YouTube Psycho Brat from Washington State. As I said, thanks again. We'll see you back here tomorrow night when you have a seat with me. Have a good evening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, I'll be watching.